Thank you very much for having me. It's actually my second time with the Chinese Open Science Network. And we in Hong Kong, we feel like we're like part of this community in some way. And we'd like to be a little bit more involved and keep in touch with all of you. If you happen to be in Hong Kong at some point, then do reach out. We'd love to meet you and see how we can collaborate and do things together. It's nice that China is doing so much in open science. I see papers coming out and collaborations, people that I know from SIPS, Society for Improvement of Psychological Science, and other initiatives. So it's nice to see the community in China growing. I really wish that things would go as well in Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, it's still pretty much like me and some of my collaborators, my team. But I'm hoping that at some point it will grow as well, and then we can have like a whole regional thing of working together, and also impacting the rest of the world. So a lot of what I do is very much about open science, meta science, collaborative science, getting together many people from around the world, from across societies and cultures, in order to work together in order to improve science. So I'll talk a little bit together with you about some issues that are really on my mind for the past 6 years. I've been on the tenure track as an assistant professor at University of Hong Kong for 6 years now. And honestly, coming into the academic system, I thought that a few things would be different. Now that I'm on the inside, perhaps some of you are already on the inside or on your way to be on the inside, PhD, postdoc, on the way to tenure track and all this, you'll get to see some of these things that I talk about. Perhaps it's a bit different in China than it is in Hong Kong and perhaps other places in the world. So maybe not everything that I will share with you will translate completely, but at least you'll be aware that these are things that we have to deal with in my environment at the University of Hong Kong and things that are on my mind. So just to start out by saying that in the spirit of open science, I don't know what access you have over there in China, but I've tried to have this barcode and this URL here, the slides, to point to open science frameworks. I hope that's unblocked in China so that you'll have access to be able to download the slides. In any case, I'll make the slides and the video available to the host, and then you'll be able to watch this afterwards. So if you miss something, if you don't understand something that I'm saying, you will have an opportunity to go back and see more. And in addition, I want to say that the slides will contain a lot of hidden slides. So if there's something that you want to know more about, then download the slides, open, have a look at the hidden slides, and then press some of these links, and you'll have a bit more of information. So I'll start out by this dilemma. I hope that you haven't seen this before. If you have, then a good time to refresh, and I'll add another question that was not presented before. This is from a published paper that presents a very classic dilemma and something that I face all the time in hiring committees at University of Hong Kong. So perhaps you're facing the job market, or you're thinking about the job market. What's going to happen when I finish the PhD? Perhaps you're thinking about your tenure. Am I going to be promoted? Am I going to be promoted? So here's a classic dilemma. I've been thinking about this quite a lot. Let's say that we have two candidates, and these candidates are both competing for a professorship. You can only hire one of these things. So it could be about hiring, or it could be about promotion. So you can only promote one of these two in order to get the associate professor or go to the next stage. Let's say that each of them has the same kind of resources. So they both have access to only 2,000 participants each year. Let's say that they are very similar in what it is that they study. So like 50% of true hypotheses, comparable research designs, and typical effects with no p-hacking, so no questionable research practices. So in the last 5 years, candidate A published 33 statistically significant papers, and candidate B only published 21 statistically significant papers. So if you are on a hiring committee in a department in China, and you're looking at these two candidates, which one of these two candidates will you hire? So think about this, and we'll move on to another question. And this is more related to the topic of the talk today. So let's say we have two candidates, same kind of thing, same access to a bunch of things, but one of them published 10 high impact factor journal publications with no preprints, no open science, no pre-registrations, no materials, data, and code sharing. But the other published in Diamond Open Access, so that means no fee open access, so available to all with no paywalls. But these are low impact factor journals that don't have any impact factors, but implemented all of the open science practices with preprints, done register reports, which I'll talk a little bit about, and shared all the materials, the data, and the code. So which one of these two candidates will your department, your university in China and across the world, who would you hire from these two? So we have these two dilemmas, right? And we're thinking like, which one should we hire? I don't have the time to like ask all of you which one you'll hire, so I'll just share with you what it is that I got from a Twitter X post that I did. So you can see that quite a few participants on Twitter and X voted. So we have here like 355, 291, 205 votes. And you can see that at least with the dilemma about whether people prefer impact factor journals or registered reports, high open science practices, you'll see that the big majority really prefers impact factors. But it's not only this, but also they prefer, I don't know, PhD from Ivy League University, and they prefer one with external grants. But the thing that I'll show you with this example here also extends to the other examples. And the question is, most people would go for and hire candidate A. Is there a problem with this candidate A? Why would we want to maybe consider candidate B? What is it about candidate B? So if you just look at the first dilemma, because they have comparable resources. So the question is, how do they allocate these resources? So in order to get these 33 statistically significant papers, they needed to allocate the number of participants differently. And what this actually meant is that candidate A only spent 25 people per condition in order to get these statistically significant papers, whereas candidate B invested a lot more in order to, in the research design, in order to power the design in 100 per condition. Does this have any impact on the rigorness or the quality or the replicability of the papers that were published? So it turns out that yes. So if you want to know a little bit more about this, so this is a publication in SPPS, a powerful nudge presenting all kinds of consequences. People focus on the wrong thing. So they focus on 33 versus 21, which is the main focal number of how many publications there are. But if you compare that they had exactly the same kind of resources, what this means is that the 25 per condition here results in about 15% false positive rate, which only like 25% of these results can be replicated in exact replications, whereas candidate B just has a much lower false positive rate and much higher replicability rate. So already we can see that in terms of comparing these two, science needs a lot more of this candidate B, but the person that we tend to hire is candidate A. This reminds me of a classic paper. So if you're in management, perhaps you're familiar with this paper. It's from 1975, so it's a classic on the folly of rewarding A while hoping for B. So we're rewarding people from the number of statistically significant papers that they publish, but actually what we're hoping for is people who are more credible and they invest more in reducing false positive rates or controlling for those, and then increasing the replicability of the findings. And this classic paper talks about all sorts of things that happen in universities that make absolutely no sense. So for example, we would like universities to have good teaching and train our undergraduates, our PhD students in the best way possible. But the only thing that we reward them for is research and publication. So it's at least in my university, it's very clear to see that teaching, even though University of Hong Kong is considered to be like an Asian Ivy League university, not much training for me in terms of teaching. So if I'm a good teacher or not a good teacher, it almost has no implication for whether I'm going to get promoted or not. What's the most important thing is research. So when we reward one thing but hope for another, then something is very broken in this system. Another thing that we discussed is the number of publications, like 10 publications, but what kind of journal? So high impact journal or a diamond open access low impact factor publication. So it seems like candidate B is a lot more credible because you can verify, and there's a better replicability because you can take the materials and just run the same kind of thing. So you have a better understanding of what is going on. There's less bias because it was conducted as a registry report, so you don't have outcome bias, Hansard bias, publication bias. If it has open peer review, like some of the registry reports that we ran, then you have an additional way to evaluate whether this was done well or not. And then just at the end, there's much more value in this, because if we look at this science evidence hierarchy, the pyramid, I agree with Chris Chambers that built this, that right now, if we just look at the status quo research that doesn't have pre-registrations, doesn't have the data and materials, the code available, then this doesn't even, should not inform policy. This should be considered to be anecdotal until we conduct high-powered independent replications, and then we see what has happened with the materials, the data, and the code. But as we move up, when we add open science practices, when we add pre-registrations, when we add data sharing, then we get to more credible things that are relevant to policymakers that we should make note of. So moving up the science credibility pyramid means more open science practices and more registry reports. So if we compare these two candidates, it's great that this person has 10 high impact factors, but this means nothing aside from prestige. We have no way to evaluate whether this really works. So the impact is very, very limited. In terms of candidate B, this is as close as we can get to the green, to the best practices, to the best evidence that we can have. So it's not only that we consider, of course, randomized control trials as better, but we also need to consider what kind of evidence is behind them. So it could be that this candidate published a lot of high impact factor publications, but what is it that we can do with this as society, as scientists, is quite limited. So the problem that I want to discuss with you today has to do with what I consider to be a broken academic publishing system. I think the subtext of this, and the reason why I'm talking to you about this today, is because I don't think a lot of academics really consider this to be a problem. What I find really surprising is that I was expecting a lot more high-profile scholars to talk about this, to do something about this, but it seems like only the open science scholars talk about this, and many of them are early career researchers. So for me to have to combat this, to worry about this as an early career assistant professor and try to go against this is almost like a sacrifice of one's own career. You really need to go against the mainstream. The impact of this, and the stuff that I think we're all paying, is that it leads to a much lower credibility of our science. There's much lower value than what we could have achieved if we've done things differently. And I just see a lot of very high costs and waste that we can minimize together if we do things correctly. I just want to start with this thing about impact factor. So why is impact factor such an obsession with academia? Why is it that we care so much about impact factor? And what's the impact of this? And I think it really starts with incentives. So we've got these wonderful papers like this one here that shows how strained we are as researchers. So I come into academia, I come into the University of Hong Kong, and I'm like, I want to do the best research that I can. I want to bring the most value to society. I want to do, I want to focus on the research. I don't want to start thinking about a number of publications and impact factors. Why is it that I do care about this? Because this is how we're evaluated, and this is how we're ranked. So my university, University of Hong Kong, chases metrics. It wants to compete with the best universities in the world, especially coming from the West, US, UK, European Union. So in order to do this, in order to establish itself as a leading university, it needs to show that it's doing better on all these rankings. How to do better on these rankings? They evaluate their own professors on these rankings. So there's a lot of pressure on me, early career, coming in as an assistant professor, to publish in the highest impact factor and then publish as many as possible. So There's very little that has to do with what is the research that I'm doing, how replicable is it, what is the false positive rate, and then what is the value to society, how many people can build on my research. So it has more to do with their prestige and rankings rather than the actual value and the credibility of the research. So it's a real dilemma. It's a dilemma that I really feel every day when I go to work, when I open the stuff and do my research. It's like, what should I do with my research? What kind of research should I aim for, and how should I conduct this? Now, what is the big problem with these impact factors? Is this really such a big deal? And I've come to realize that this is a huge problem. And I've tried to kind of find 10 different examples that would make this clear for you. But if you're not familiar with impact factors, then this is how they're calculated. So you're looking back at 2 years, and you're looking at the total citations received towards the journal and the number of citations that are published in the journal that have a citable items in there. And then you just divide this one by this one. This is a very simple measure of this. Now, it seems pretty straightforward, but it's like when you actually look at the details and you try to understand how did they decide this kind of thing, it seems like there are a lot of nuances there. So for example, if you have published online first, then this doesn't count and only counts the next year, and then you get like an additional year in order to get more citations. So you can game this system. You can do a bunch of things in order to increase the citation rate when it starts to count for this equation. And then you can negotiate this. So it seems like a lot of journals kind of negotiate which articles can be included in this, what is considered to be a citable item, when does the journal start to count the number of citations that are coming in. So generally it is a product. It's handled by a commercial company, a for-profit company. It can be negotiated, and a lot of journals game this. So a lot of practices happening in journals seem to be targeted in order to increase journals' impact factor. There's a lot of other things. I'll just show you some examples. The impact factor is per journal. So just the fact that you published in this journal has nothing to do with the article impact, but rather the journal that you aimed for. What is the problem with this? There is a very long tail skew. So it seems like, for example, in science, there's just like a number of papers that are above 100, but most of the papers just have lower than 10 citations or around 10 citations. So you can see here some of the leading journals. So for example, Cell, that has the impact factor of about 30 point something. You can see that most of them are less than 30, but there's like this big peak of a few very highly impactful papers that influence and change the entire distribution of that journal and make the journal higher. But if you look at most of the papers are actually on the lower side. So what does it mean that we've submitted to a journal that has more of the skew at the end? Says very little about the actual thing. If you want a really good talk about all the problems with impact factors, so this is James Heathers, and he gives a bunch of talks about all the problems with the impact factor. Go and watch this. It's wonderful. But generally, the claims that he's saying is that it's a closed product. We don't know how they're doing this. It's irreproducible. So other people have tried to calculate similar things in order to see how this works out. And it's really been gamed by a lot of these prestigious for-profit publisher journals. If you want other academic papers that are trying to summarize this, then more and more of them are coming out. So here we have some of the leading names and people that are trying to fight these for-profit publishers and are working within the EU in order to promote a different strategy. For having more diamond open access that people can go and read, regardless of impact factors and prestige. What are some of the issues with the publishers? Why is for-profit publishing so bad for us? There's two very good videos here. I'll just play one of those. I hope that you'll be able to hear this. This is a TikToker, a YouTuber, influencer. He is a doctor. He works within hospitals. He does a lot of interesting comedy stuff about academia, about the medical profession. This one is about the for-profit publisher nature. So I'll just try to play this. If this doesn't work, then just tell me, okay?
Hey, Christopher. Yeah, boss, what's up? What do you think about making some of our articles open access? That's a good idea. Make the articles free to the public so that anybody can appreciate the latest scientific advancements. I like it. Of course, the author would have to pay some kind of publishing fee. Yeah, okay, that's reasonable. What, like a couple $100? Yeah, I was thinking maybe $11,000. What? Yeah, $11,000, and we put your article on our website for anybody to read. Why so much? Oh, you know, all the costs. What costs? Reviewing the article? Yeah, we don't pay reviewers. We guilt them into it because it's good for science. Okay, what about formatting? Your 12-year-old niece does that for us. Well, we gotta publish it. That costs money. It's a PDF on a website. Kaylee does it in like 2 seconds. Kaylee? Your niece. Oh, yeah. Besides, who's going to be able to afford this? Oh, people will pay. Why? Because they have to. What do you mean? Researchers have to publish in order to keep their jobs or get promoted, and we're one of the most prestigious journals around. People will pay. So it's extortion. Here at Nature, we're doing crime. Oh, Christopher, don't be so dramatic. So let me get this straight. You want to charge researchers $11,000 to publish an open access article, thereby ensuring that only researchers with the most money get to publish an article, which defeats the purpose of having open access articles in the first place. Yeah, that's right. And this is guaranteed to be profitable because researchers' livelihoods are dependent on a predatory system that values publishing in high-impact journals. Hey, you got it. This, of course, is insane. It's academics, baby.
It's academics, baby. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad that this is our reality, and this is what we are joining when we go into a well-established university like my university, University of Hong Kong. So in order to publish in this top-tier journal, in these prestigious journals, Science, Nature, Springer Nature, Elsevier, and the others charge you a lot of money. If they don't charge you for open access, the APCs, then they charge the libraries in order to access the research that we actually conducted. So here's like a little, I can't remember exactly where I got this from, but attitudes towards open access researchers in China. So this has a little bit to do with you. So what is like an acceptable APC for open access? So most of the people said, I don't know, $700 US. I don't know why $700 US, but I'd say, but of course, the more it increases, the less likely for this to be an acceptable thing. So I think we're sensitive to these costs, and every cost that goes into an APC is a cost that we don't invest in hiring PhDs or postdocs or funding our research, doing grants and all of that. How about the knowledge regarding open access? Many people don't understand what is open access and why they need to pay for this. It's something that I really struggle with in Hong Kong. So my big allies at University of Hong Kong are actually not the researchers. It's a little bit ironic, but it's the librarians. The librarians understand open access and understand the cost and understand the insanity of this situation. So they are the ones that are my true allies at University of Hong Kong trying to promote Diamond Open Access. So these are some of the fees. So here in academia, we pay Science, Nature up to 12,300 US dollars. Whereas, of course, if you publish as an author in other places, you get paid for that. But we don't get anything from these for-profit publishers. They get all of our research for free. We give them our IP for eternity, and then they just like put it behind a paywall and ask us to pay money in order to access our own research and the stuff that we've done. So we're all familiar with this insanity where the taxpayers pay our salaries, they pay our grants, they pay our peer review time, they pay everything. And then what we actually end up doing is giving this to a for-profit publisher in order to do some kind of like funky PDF that we can do ourselves. They put this behind a website, and then they charge both us and the taxpayers in order to access the research that we've already funded. So this makes absolutely no sense. It's an absolutely insane situation. When I came into science and academia, I just couldn't believe that this is the system of publishing. Maybe it's tailored towards something in the 19th century where we needed paper and in order to disseminate all the paper journals, but nowadays we don't need this. How much are behind like a paywall? You'll see that worldwide we're 70%, perhaps even more, that we can't even access publicly. Google Scholar and other let's call it platforms have made this a little bit easier, but there's still a lot that can't be accessed. We sometimes pay triple pay for gaining access, just because we submit this to these prestige for-profit publishers. So libraries pay subscriptions, then some of the labs pay the APCs for open access, and then research institutions, based on taxpayers' money, pay us researchers to write, to evaluate, to edit, to proofread, and do everything. So the added value from the for-profit publisher really is nothing besides putting a PDF on a website. When you look at the profit margins for the for-profit, the publishers, it's absolutely insane. They're just very, very high compared to many of the other companies that we know, like Walmart, even the banks. It's just unbelievable how much is spent on this. Profit margins, you can compare this to many others, like Tesla 2%, Elsevier 38%, and so forth. It seems like it's just growing every year. So I got a bunch of statistics here for you, so you can have a look at this and see how ridiculous this is, and it just keeps on rising. How much are the costs? So if people in mainland China consider 700 to be like a reasonable APC, you will see that in Elsevier, most of the journals are above 2,500, whereas you've got like a bunch of those that with high impact factor, they realize that they can charge more, so they would ask you for more money, getting very close to 10,000 US dollars. Completely insane. So you can see the cost of APCs rising every year, where we get into just like very large sums. So if we look at globally, it's a total of something like $8.3 billion spent on APCs between 2019 and 2023. So I would say like 2 billion per year. And this is just the APCs. This is not like subscriptions or what the libraries pay in order to access the research that's not open access. So there's a bunch more here. You can go in and look at all these things. Just an anecdote from University of Hong Kong. This is unofficial, so the librarians are not willing to share this kind of thing, but I took whatever is public in order to see the HKU spending report. I would say 90% of Hong Kong university library resources go for subscriptions, so that's quite a lot. And then there's an undisclosed amount that each researcher pays. My estimate is that HKU spends about 200 million Hong Kong dollars annually on paying publishers. And if you think about all of Hong Kong together, we have 8, 9, depends how you look at this, universities that need access, and your researchers need to be able to access this research. So I would say my estimate, very unfounded on anything, is that over 1 billion Hong Kong dollars annually are paid for that. And then we don't know how much is paid for open access. And I would estimate this is about the same. So my estimation is about 2 billion Hong Kong dollars annually goes just to pay for these for-profit publishers with their APCs and their subscriptions. Some places around the world are trying to change this. So we've got the US government trying to do a bunch of stuff about this. There's another video here that you can watch afterwards if you want, about the way the for-profit publishers reacted to the Biden administration and the European Union trying to change things. So rather than going along with this and understanding that they need to do something different, whenever a country or a continent tries to do something differently, the for-profit publishers punish it by increasing the APCs or increasing the money that they demand in order to access our research. So it's unbelievable. So for me, it's a shame. So yeah, it took just like one article published in Nature Human Behavior by a group that I really like and part of the Chinese Open Science Network. And it's a shame that, we don't have access to this. And in order to have access to this, if you're not part of a university, people would have to pay $32 because this seems important. Promoting computational psychiatry in China is something that we should be able to read, regardless of where we are and what we have access to, money to pay. So this is like my summary of the problem. I consider these for-profit publishers to be parasites. I don't know why they exist. I don't know why we let them exist. And anybody who participates in allowing this thing to keep on going seems to me like not allowing for progress to be made. So when I came to University of Hong Kong, I had a decision to make. Do I play along with this in order to feed these parasites and go for, tenure track? The University of Hong Kong requires me to play along with this game, but do I try to do things a little bit differently? So I want to share with you today, in the remaining time that we have, is how to move away from this and what you can do, even as an early career researcher. If you care about open science and you come into a university just like mine that promotes this kind of system, this ecosystem of for-profit publishers with impact factors and number of publications, how you can do things a little bit differently. But my main message is that we should really get rid of this for-profit publishers and this obsession with impact factors in the number of publications. How do we start going about doing that? So I guess if you know anything about open science and you've seen some of the slides throughout the years coming from the Center of Open Science, this is kind of the leading one. So we have the pyramid of change. You start with the infrastructure and you go into an experience and then communities and incentives, and finally you get to policy. And they have this, I really like this path of first make it possible, then make it easy, then make it normative, then make it rewarding, and finally, if you can, make it required. So I want to show you that we've already achieved the make it easy and make it possible. So there are solutions right now. It's even on the path to making it rewarding. So still the incentive system is very much against you, but hopefully I'll be able to convince you that I've done things within this incentive system that would allow you to at least survive. And then I'm hoping that through talks like this, it will become more and more normative. And finally, I think the biggest solution that could be is that if in the EU, in the Biden administration, perhaps even in China someday, it will become mandatory that things will be diamond open access and things will have open science with registered reports for confirmatory quantitative analysis and so forth. Another thing that we can do is that we can stop reviewing for these journals. So I don't review for for-profit publishers. If you're an editor over there, you can quit. A lot of people do quit, so you're welcome to do this. There are some solutions where there was a mass, like all the editors quit together. So that's another thing that we can perhaps do and consider. What happens if we just stop paying them? So I would like University of Hong Kong to just say to these for-profit publishers, no more these 2 billion Hong Kong dollars. Let's just give this to grants, or let's just give this to postdocs and PhDs. Let's just fund more research with this. So it seems like nothing happens. So when big Ivy League universities, MIT, for example, stops paying Elsevier, nothing happens. They find other ways of accessing this research. So we can stop just with this extortion of having to pay in order to access the research that we did. Completely unreasonable. So we can just stop doing this. And the Dutch actually passed a law where they assist professors that post their stuff for free online. If they get sued, the Dutch government is the one that protects the scholar. So it's not each scholar for his or her own self, but it's rather the government that is saying to Elsevier, which is a Dutch company, enough with this, we're not going to do this anymore. So one of the biggest solutions that I want to talk to you about is what's called peer community and they have also their own journal. So it's called Peer Community Journal, something that you can consider. It doesn't matter what domain you're in. So I'm in psychology, social psychology, but even if you're coming from a different discipline, then there are some peer community in communities in your domain. And basically what it is that it builds a community by researchers for researchers. So it's the academic community without any publisher behind it that works on collaboratively as a community to peer review preprints. So you post this I have a preprint, you post this publicly to everybody in one of these free platforms. So, for example, I use Open Science Framework preprints, and then the community comes in and reviews this and gives an endorsement of whether this preprint is worthy of publication or not. And all of the peer review, everything that's conducted, is conducted publicly. So it also has open peer review. So first, it builds on preprints with open materials, data, and code. And then it also has open peer review on that. So you can see here that we have a lot of peer community in. So we have ecology and microbiology and some other domains. So you can see kind of like the evolution. It started from biology, but now there's so much more that has come in. The one that I will discuss with you is called Peer Community in Register Reports, that does specifically register reports using the peer community in platform. This is basically what it looks like. So you post your preprint and your data and your scripts and your code somewhere public. And then the community, the website, assigns a recommender, which is a little bit like an editor. They invite reviewers. And then these reviewers and the general community, anybody who's interested, can write a review on this, and then they're posted together, to say, okay, this preprint, these are the recommendations from the community, and these are the open peer review that is associated with that. Everything has a DOI, so everything is citable from the recommendation to the reviews, and of course the preprint that you've posted. This is what it looks like. So you can have a peer community in evolutionary biology report that looks a little bit like this. And then it has all these badges of, open access, open data, open code, open peer review. So it's just built in the system. This is what a recommendation looks like. So it says who reviewed this, who is the recommender, who is the editor, what were the peer reviews. And then you can have an option of both identified and unidentified reviews. As an author, when I submit, I always ask for identified, and this just gives better credit to the reviewers, and then I can also kind of like address things, and you can see the accountability of who reviewed what when, in order to see the entire process. So it's everything open, everything shared, everything with a DOI part of this community. Now, what happens when the community endorses this? You can actually choose what to do this. So you can keep this as a preprint if you want to, but you can also submit this into PCI-friendly journals. PCI-friendly journals are a list of journals that say, if you have an endorsement from the community, we will publish this with no additional peer review. So if you've got an endorsement from the community, the publisher says, we'll publish this as is. In addition, you can also go to other journals and say, we have an endorsement from the community, will you publish this with us? And some of them might say, okay, we need more editorial, we need to go over this in order for the editors to consider whether this is good or not. Or some of them might require an additional peer review just in order to verify that this is according to their best practices in that journal. So you can see some examples for some of the journals. So PeerJ is a very well-known one. This is, they will accept this with no further reviews. And then you've got a bunch of other ones that might accept this with further reviews or, all sorts of other things, but all of these will give you a fast response. So you can, as an author, decide, okay, I'll try it with this journal. Okay, this journal doesn't want it. Okay, I'll try it with this journal. All the power is with you. So the community also empowers the author to decide which journal do you want to publish with. The journals that just publish this as is, or if you want to go for others that are more well-known in your field, that's also okay. In addition, you can also decide to publish this with Peer Community Journal. Because it's been running for only 2 years, it doesn't have an impact factor, but within I think the next 3 years, it will have an impact factor. It should be a very high impact factor because it includes all of the fields together. So for example, in psychology, we're typically in the impact factors of 2 to 5, but because of all these other things, biology and ecology and all of that, then it's probably going to be a lot higher than this, a little bit like PLOS1 and others. But in the meanwhile, if you need to convince your university why peer community journal, then it's indexed by a lot of things. And some of the funders, for example, if you're in the European Union, also acknowledge this and see this as having merit. So peer community journal or peer community in endorsed manuscript already have high evaluation standards for some of the universities, the funders in the European Union. Last thing that I want to share with you is this thing about peer community and register reports. Because you're familiar with open science, I'm assuming you're also familiar with register reports. I just want to say that if you're not, then I gave a talk about this to this China Open Science Network 2 years ago. You can go and have a look at that either on YouTube or on Open Science Framework. You can download the video and watch it over there. So I've discussed what register reports are and why they're important. And I also introduced a little bit of peer community. So this kind of like recounts some of the things over there. I'll just say very, very briefly, if you're familiar with registered reports, but you're not sure why this is good for you, as an early career researcher or as somebody who wants to survive in this academic system, it's not just good for science, it's also good for you. Because if you get an in-principle acceptance for your stage one, before data collection, before you invested any kind of money into recruiting participants, you can already put this on your CV because an in-principle acceptance is a guaranteed publication. So I'll show you what that looks like in our team. So we have about, 20 of these in-principle acceptance. And that means that my students, when they go into the industry or when they go apply for academia, they already have this line in the CV saying that there's a guaranteed publication. So whoever hires them will have this publication written as the institution when it gets finally accepted. Higher acceptance rates, so I don't know where you're submitting to, but our rejection rate used to be between 70 and 80%, which is very frustrating. This is especially true because I run replications. A lot of journals are not open for replications. But once we started submitting to registered reports, our rejection rate dropped into less than 10%. So we had very few rejections. And once we had a rejection from one journal, we were able to submit this to another journal. So if you count all of this together, our rejection rate so far since we moved to registered reports has been zero. So zero rejection going down from 70, 80%. So there's lots of reasons for you to consider registered reports as an early career researcher. The last thing that I want to share with you is what is this peer community in registered reports? So one of the categories in the peer community is about registered reports, and it offers a lot of opportunities for you. So for example, you're very worried about, I don't have time to do registered reports as an early career researcher. I have to graduate. I have to do things on time. I have, 4 years in order to get my CV to the best possible during my PhD in order to get a tenure track. So I'm here to tell you that I'm able to do these things with my undergraduate students and my master's students within a 6 to 8 months period. How am I able to do this? Because peer community in registered reports offers you something called a scheduled review. So if you schedule a review 6 weeks in advance, they will guarantee to give you a review within 2 weeks. And within all of our scheduled, I think we had more than 25 of these scheduled reviews, they have been able to give us the first review within 2 weeks. So they really live up to this guarantee. The thing that I mentioned to you, that we don't have to commit to a journal, so the power is in the author's hand. And I also really like it that as somebody who does replications, I really want to know who reviews my research, so I can ask for identifiable authors. So the reviewers need to say who they are. So if there is an original author that is very hostile, I think they'll think twice if their name is also associated with this. But this is also a good thing for the reviewers because then they can get credit for this. So if there's an early career researcher who reviewed for peer community, they can also add this as a CV line in order to say, I participated in the community, I care about the community, I care about open science, and then somebody can go in and see the quality of their reviews. Who can you publish with if you do this? So I highlighted in red the ones that I participated with. So we've published with Collabra Psychology, which is pretty reputable international review of social psychology. Most recently, a new one, Psychology of Consciousness. We just got one paper in there. And Meta Psychology, which to me is like one of the most revolutionary journals out there. It's amazing what this journal does. and he also is part of this community. So these are the ones that will automatically publish your endorsed manuscript. So you can just go with peer community. Let's say that you're doing stuff with neuro and you're worried about, I need impact factors and I need to publish, but I want to do things in the right way. I want to publish preprints, and I want the community to do peer review for me, and I want to do things with peer community in registry reports. What can you do? So for example, here you can see Cortex, which is a pretty solid neuroscience journal. You can just submit your neuroscience stuff to registry reports, peer community in registry reports, and then once this is endorsed, Cortex will automatically publish this for you with no additional peer review. So if I would be a neuro guy, I would just be, peer community, peer community, peer community, and then once it's endorsed, then I will go to Cortex. If you don't like these journals for some reason and you prefer, I don't know, Nature, Human Behavior, or some of these others, then these are journals that keep getting signals from peer community, and whenever they see something they're interested in, they will reach out to you to say, we're interested in that. And this happened to me a number of times with some of the editors on the right side saying, please consider submitting to us. They saw that I got the in-principle acceptance for stage 1, and then they said, we're interested, please submit this to us. This is how I do things with my students. So since 2021, all of my students, and we're talking about undergraduates and master's students, all of them submit their thesis to peer community in registry reports in order to get expert peer review on their pre-registration before the data collection. And this is how I do this. So finally, you can see an example here. So we've got Kirk here that did this registry report with me, and you can see that we published this eventually in Collabra, and Collabra automatically published this based on a recommendation from peer community in registry reports. If you look at the right side, you'll see that we actually shared everything. So we shared from the stage 1, the first submission, the second submission, and how we addressed all of the peer review, all of our power analysis, the Qualtrics, the simulated data for the first stage because it's a pre-registration. So we simulated data and then we ran the data analysis on the simulated data. And finally, in the stage 2, you can see that we've shared all the real data in code, and you can see how we have addressed the 2 stages of the peer review feedback that we received. Then you can compare very easily stage 2 to stage 1. If you want to hear more from Kirk and others, this is Timothy, who also did with me. Then we have a bunch of talks for you to have a look at HKU Brown Bag. So go and listen to Timothy and hear from him, his experience of doing peer community in registry reports and getting expert peer review from the community on an undergraduate thesis. And he calls this the best learning experience for researchers. So take it from an undergraduate student, finishing, I think he's going to finish with 2 publications that he's doing with me as an undergraduate, which is unbelievable. So we've shown that this is possible. We've shown a successful proof of concept, moving away from for-profit publishers, doing the best kind of high impact open science, highly reproducible and transparent with a peer community in a registered report. How many have we done? Just to show you that this can be applied for a lot more. We've published already 8 of those, and a bunch of others have received in-principle acceptance. So we got already to only 2 here, 29. So overall, we've got like 30 at least in-principle acceptance, many of them already published, of students, undergraduates, and masters who have done this kind of thing with me. So if these undergraduates and masters can do this with me at the University of Hong Kong, then any of you also can. You just need to follow the steps that we've done. If you want to see what that looks like, there's some links here. You can punch it in. But this is what it generally looks like on their website. So this is very similar to the peer community in recommendation. So you can see what the recommendation is, which journals you can publish this with no additional peer review, and you can also see the peer review open and identifiable. So for example, we got peer review from who used to be the former editor of the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. So very prominent people, and they come in and they give us some good constructive feedback. A lot of very enthusiastic posts about peer community. So I'm not the only person who's saying that this is of value. If you want to know more about this, lots of videos out there. lots of articles as well. Our experience has been very, very positive. I just want to share with you. So one of the students who has worked with me, and I think is also part of the Chinese Open Science Network, is Kang. He used to be in Maastricht. I think he's now got a job elsewhere. But this is what he wrote to me. I'll just summarize this for you. He learned a lot. He really likes it that this community is pro open science. So he learned a lot from peer community about how to implement best practices of open science. It's really nice to be part of a community because you get a lot of support and feedback and you're not alone. And it's very feasible and highly rewarding. If you're asking how to finance this kind of thing, if you do registered reports, then it's a lot easier to convince the university to fund you because you have a guaranteed publication. So I was able to get this for 30 of my students at University of Hong Kong saying, if we give you an in-principle acceptance, stage 1, a guaranteed publication, will you fund this? And they said, yes, we'll fund up to 8,000 Hong Kong dollars for a data collection for 30 undergraduate and master's students. So that's a way to convince your university to do things a little bit better. How to do this yourself. We've got a lot of resources for you. So you can go on my website and look at all the resources available to you. Just mention 2 of these. So for example, we have a template of how to do our registered report stage 1. So if my undergraduate students can follow this and do just like step by step and conduct their research based on that, then I'm sure that you can as well. The nice thing about this is that if something is missing for you, it's a collaborative manuscript, so you can actually go and write in what's missing for you, and I'll update that. Another guide that we have, a big collaboration, some of the people here also in the China Open Science Network. So you've got Chinyu over here that's in Vienna right now. So guide to effect sizes and confidence intervals. So we have a lot of these collaborative guides in order to help you do better research and do things in an open science way. In addition, all of my teaching, all of my materials, everything is available for you on the Open Science Framework. So you can just go and download all of my slides, all of my materials, all of my videos, and use this as you like. So open science is not just about research, it's also about training, about teaching, about working together as a community to do better science. So final recommendations for you and stuff that you can do is like just take all of our resources and do your own thing. If you want, you can also join our team. So if there's something here that's not clear and you want to work together with me or together with our team on doing registered reports or doing peer community, then I'm very happy to. If you're not sure about how to do Diamond Open Access and how to move away from for-profit publishers, I'm very happy to support you in this and kind of give you guidance from my own career and what is it that I decided to do. Generally, what I want to say is that I would love for you to implement open science in your labs, move away from the traditional model and set example for others. I really feel like in 5-10 years, this will become more mainstream and hopefully even policy. So if you're thinking about the job market, if you're thinking about what's going to happen in 5-10 years, I hope that this is the direction that it's going to go, at least in the European Union and in the US, hopefully in the China region as well. So just contact me and let me know how I can help you in order to do better. Everything that I talked about is on my website, so you can scan this barcode, QR code, and then contact me through different channels. Some students or medical researchers don't like to contact professors, and I don't know why. So if you have any question, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm very happy to hear from you. Even if I'm busy, which can happen during the semester, then I'll at least reply and perhaps get you in touch with some of the other people in our team. But definitely I don't ignore anybody, and I love to hear from students and people who care about open science and doing things right. So that was like a brief session of a very complicated topic. I give 1 semester courses on this whole thing. If you ever have any questions or things that you want to discuss, contact me and I'm happy to stay here and answer questions for as long as you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, this is a very great talk, and we learned a lot about the shortcomings in the current publishing systems, and also learned lecture reports and how it can help us and the students to even publish more good papers. And we still have a couple of minutes, and anyone has a question I would like to ask? if you prefer asking questions in Chinese or in Mandarin, it's fine. So we can try to translate for you. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Let me know if you have any question about the talk or any comments you would like to share.
So, hi. You really completing my knowledge about the history of open science. And what I would like to know is how is the feedback from the research community in the US and Europe, and how is the feedback from the government? What are their like reactions to this open science trend, and what are they plan to go? I mean, to like support open science. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was expecting senior scholars and countries, policymakers, to move a lot faster because there's obviously something here that needs a big change. I think anybody just going and spending a few minutes thinking about the system makes sees that it makes no sense. So I just don't understand why we play along with this. But there are signs that things are changing. I think the biggest push for this came because of the COVID pandemic. So we realized that we need much faster science. So we need preprints and we need to share as much as possible. And we can't wait 3 years for a paper to be published in a prestigious journal, moving from one journal to another journal every time you get a rejection. So we need things that are a lot more credible, and we need things that are a lot more faster, and we need things that serve the community rather than hidden behind a paywall when we have something like COVID, like a pandemic. We also are facing similar things right now with climate change and some other AI is like a big topic. So we need to move faster. And I think there's more recognition for this. So for example, UNESCO came out with a declaration in 2022 saying that open science now needs to be the de facto default for this, and they're calling for others. So I think it will take, I don't know, 5-10 years from UNESCO to like trickle down. But then there's others that joined in working with the Center of Open Science. So NASA in the US is doing a big push. The Biden administration is changing things. Plan S and the Europeans are stirring things up. The Dutch have, done some very extreme open science practices, stop paying for the for-profit publishers and protecting some of their authors in order to do things a different way. So there are signs that some things are changing. Unfortunately, I still go around the world giving workshops, and a lot of people have not heard about this, or the change is very small, slow, and restricted to like certain fields or certain places in the world. I don't know why change is so slow. When I will have any kind of power, I will try to use that power in order to affect at least change within the surrounding where I'm at. But the more we talk about this, the more we have discussions, the more we expect this of our universities and our communities, the more likely it is that there is going to be a change. So change is happening. It is starting. It's on a smaller scale right now, but I believe like in 5-10 years, it's going to be enough of us in order to really promote a big change throughout, all the sciences and anywhere in the world. But that's me being very optimistic and hopeful. It is up to us in order to make this happen. Yeah, I think like one of the questions on the chat is, so obviously the for-profit publishers don't, they try to shape all kinds of things. So there's lots of players out there with different incentives. And I think like having any kind of discussion with policymakers and having publishers join like any discussion is a good discussion, but we need to be at least aware of the incentives and what people have to gain from this. So I'm very hesitant whenever I see for-profit publishers doing all kinds of things. I'm a little bit hesitant of their motives and what is it that they're contributing. And right now we have solutions like peer community that do not involve any of the for-profit publishers. So we can do things on our own. We have the platforms, we have the resources, we have the people. So maybe we don't need to involve all the classic publishers in this kind of process.
Hi. Good day. Well, I think I'll also talk a little bit about one of the reasons why things are so slow, and it is because it's a really collective action problem. So we have a lot of people like Gilad really pushing the boundaries of what you can do individually, I would say. But in the end, science is a large collective system, and that's just very slow. So I think that's what makes it difficult. And I think the pyramid that he described, yeah, there is a point why at a certain moment somebody says, well, people, now you all have to come along and do what we've been showing that you can do, but with a little bit of policy, a little bit of top-down direction. And I'm happy to see Gilad say that if he gets more power, which I think he should get, maybe not only in his university, but maybe at a higher level, he can start to promote these kind of things. It's just regrettably necessary that some people get a little bit of a push in the right direction.